Kelly Lynn Adams. How are you?
Good, Jocelyn. I'm so excited to be here.
I am thrilled to have you here. And we start the same way every time, which is what does confidence mean to you?
Such a great question. Confidence means to me that you are totally embodied in yourself, whether that is messy, imperfect, you are just your full self, and whatever that looks like in the moment. And it can change from minute to minute.
Yeah, I agree. Like it's honestly ever flowing. And it's like, what do we need to show up in that minute? So, how are you? How are you showing up right now?
Oh my gosh. So I am so busy.
Yeah.
I've had a wild day today, and things like this, right? When you are in kind of the day to day,
Mhm.
meeting to meeting, it's like, how do you show up? So it's really honoring where you're at. And I feel like a lot of people feel like, oh, I have to put on this mask and be confident and secure and all of that. And sometimes that's just not it, right? Sometimes it's like, okay, maybe I really want to be at a level 10, but today I'm actually at a level 7. And can you be okay with that and be confident in that? Because we are human beings. We're not AI robots in chat, right? And we get to honor that. So even if you're not feeling 100% confident, like how confident in this moment can you be, and how embodied and embracing the moment can you be?
Yeah, I think something that you just said was really huge because there's one thing to acknowledge where we are in the moment, like on a scale, if we were to rate it from 1 to 10, but to really honor that, which you just called out, I think is huge because we can say, all right, I'm at a 7 today and acknowledge it, right? But to live that and to be okay with it is a completely different thing because even if I can acknowledge, like today I have a runny nose, right? But like, how can I be okay as a level 7 and not try to strive for that 10 when I don't have it in me?
Absolutely. It's in the coaching era, we call it whatever you want, level of consciousness, or like think of a ladder, and
Mhm.
each step, right? So, oh, we want to get to the top. And it's like, okay, well, maybe on the ladder right now, I'm at step 3. And really step, say 15 or 20 is like way too much. It's too much pressure. It's like, okay, how can I get to step 5 or 6 or even just the next step? And I think people put so much internal pressure on themselves
Mhm.
that they feel like they need to be at that step 15 or 20. And that's just not true. A lot of people have a lot of things going on in life. We're human beings. We're dealing with, grief. We're dealing with insecurity. We're dealing with all of it, health challenges, financial challenges, right? Like this is life. And as life is lifing, how do we get to be and be the best person and do the best thing that we can and embody who we are too?
Yeah. One of the quotes that I love is like, we are human beings, not human doings. And what you've said really like resonates with that phrase. Like, how can we just be in this moment? And I want to go back to your definition of confidence and talk about how do we get there? How do we show up authentically in each moment? Because when we're trapped in our minds, it's so easy for the mind to race and for us to feel inadequate. So how do we get to a place of confidence?
Yeah, great question. So for me, what I have learned and what has worked for me is taking consistent action and just being consistent in that action. So, for example, I'm going through, my coach wants me to be more on social media and create more video and reels. And I'm like, oh, right. It's like, I don't want to. And then every time, right, I'm get on camera, it's like those noises. What
Mhm.
if? And then I do the social media scroll and I look at everyone else and I'm like, oh, I'm not good enough. Or how did my voice sound? Or how did I look? Did I say did all of that noise? And it's like, Kelly, just do the damn thing. And so when there's a crack in confidence, I know for me, it's basically not trusting myself. It's because I have said I was going to do something and didn't do it. So it's the consistent commitment with myself that it starts with first. And that's for me. And it's not like, oh, well, I'm always consistent with myself and I still, right, and maybe I still feel not as confident as I could be. And that's okay. However, that just builds, that puts the coins in the confidence bank of just being consistent with yourself. And like I said to myself, you know, if for work, say for working out, for example, if I wanted to get back into working out, right, because I haven't worked out in a while, my promise to myself, I start small. I'm going to be like, okay, I'm just going to take a walk one time a week. And some people, they're all or nothing kind of mentality. It's like, no, if I can't work out 5 times a week, then I'm out. Right.
Yeah.
And so in there, right, can we get curious of being like, okay, can we start slow and small? And as society, because we are such a Amazon Prime, Venmo, whatever, right? Chat GBT, like we are so quick. We want the results quick. And it's like, okay, can we relax and just take a beat and be gentle on ourselves, give ourselves compassion and grace and really, okay, one step at a time and see, because a lot of people, I know for myself, I've totally broken promises to myself. And then I feel even more shame and resentment and guilt because I said I was going to do something and I didn't do it. So how I do that, how I now correct that is I start off small and only commit to know what I'm absolutely, going to do.
I love that. And it goes back to giving yourself grace, but also being realistic. Huge changes, huge leaps are great and amazing, but they're oftentimes not sustainable. And so that slow and steady progress is really what's going to get us there without having to experience burnout or that perpetual feeling of disappointment because we didn't, step up to the plate. And one of the things that you mentioned was, meeting yourself and having that commitment to do what you said you were going to do. And in my experience, when I don't do it, like showing up on social media or some of the things that we need to do in our business, right? It goes back to the voices that I've heard in the past or my past experiences of, I didn't feel adequate enough, or I didn't feel like I performed well enough, or who am I to do X, Y, and Z? And that's living in the past. And so if we can take our mindsets out of the past and be where we are right here, right now, quiet the noise, like you said, and just exist as we are, knowing that like we're not beholden to past mistakes, other people's opinions, it makes it that much easier to honor the commitments we set with ourselves.
100%. And with the past, it's releasing the past, right? And a lot of us hold on to something that is known because it feels safer, even if you're in pain, right? You will, I know I have held on for dear life because it's familiar, it's safe, I know it, and I still don't feel comfortable, but the unknown, right? And this is just fear. The unknown is more scary to me to take that leap, to be like, oh, I might not be as confident as I am in the safety and security of what is known and maybe painful or not good for me. So yeah, the whole past and releasing the past, it's definitely a process. I know for me, it has been. And it's just baby steps around that too.
Yeah. So tell us about either how you've done that or how you help your clients release the past, because it's one thing to say it, but it's hard to do because it's all we know. It's not all that we are, because what we are is this present moment, but it's all that we know is our past experiences. So how do we get back to center and to source?
Yeah. So it's really, it's getting, I like to say it's an internal job, right? So it's like getting curious about, okay, why am I still holding on? Or why am I not, can I let this go? Or why do I feel like I can't move on? So just getting curious with ourselves. And in coaching, there's a modality, and it's really like psychotherapy. It's called IFS, so parts work. And what that says, parts work is really just all parts of ourselves are welcome. So you're going to have the non-letting go, the attachment, right? The envy, the jealousy, the fear, all parts. And so it's okay. We want all parts to be with us because that's our human nature. However, we get to say which parts go down in the basement or which parts can come up in the living room, in a sense, right? So it's like, okay, if there's fear, I see you, fear, I acknowledge you. And it's like, okay, you're going to go down in the basement for right now, and not shaming that part. So it's really like self-love of all parts, even the parts we don't like about ourselves, right? Or maybe we overthink, or maybe different things, or maybe we judge, right? So all the parts are welcomed. It's okay, because really it's all programming. When we were 0 to 7, our subconscious are very malleable. So we've all been programmed by society, by caretakers, by the people we were around, and none of it is our fault. We're not broken. We don't need fixing. However, we've all been programmed in a certain sense, but it's giving compassion. So the first step is like really getting honest of like, okay, what parts are showing up? What am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? Not judging it bad, wrong, indifferent, right? It just is. The second piece is then really doing like maybe the 1% or even 5% of the scary stuff, right? Of the thing that you should, I hate that word should, because it really should is just shaming ourselves, but that you want to be doing or desire to be doing, or something that scares you, whatever's uncomfortable, right? That is going towards that desire or that want or that, right? Because that's what it is. It's getting comfortable in the uncomfortable, and also knowing that you're going to do the best you can. And knowing, and this is what I say too, is whenever you have a desire or a feeling, this is what I do. I actually embody that feeling, like, because we want what we want, because we think that thing or that person is going to make us feel a certain way. So the game is feel that feeling now and embody that now, and then take the action. So I like to do that because it's like, okay, say for money, for example, if you want a multi-million-dollar business, okay, how would you feel if you had it right now? What would you be doing, right? Or if you want to feel a certain way in your body, right? Imagine it's kind of like reverse engineering, having the final, image or feeling, and then reverse engineering back to it. So it's really embodying the feeling of it already being done, because this is the thing, success and everything you want is already here.
Right.
People already have what you want, or a feeling, or what, if it's vacations, if it's the home, it's the partner, it's the money, it's the good health, it's already out there. So it's like, okay, what do we get to unlearn, relearn, reteach ourselves in order, right, to embody that? Because it's already here. Nothing is, and if nothing is here, it can be created. So exactly. I know I'm getting a little woo-woo, but I would say first step is to really get honest and like be loving on all the things and the feelings and the parts that are showing up. And then number 2 is, okay, getting comfortable in the uncomfortable. Number 3 is feeling those feelings of your desire already being done, or however you want to feel if you have it. And I would say 4 is like taking the aligned action. Okay, 1% or 5% better. How can you just kind of shift into that? And it could be, and I made a video about this yesterday, the power of 1. It's not sexy. No one likes the power of 1, but it's so important. Like 1 connection in my life, landed me an international speaking event, right? To speak on stage. 1 connection has led me to sign on high ticket clients, coaching clients, right? So the power of 1 is pretty real, but people sometimes are like, oh, that's not sexy. I need more. It's society. I need more. I need, more basically.
But it goes back to the fact that it's about the journey, not the destination. Like if we get so fixated on this thing that is in the future that we have not actualized or experienced now, we don't actually know what it feels like. We don't know what it is. So how do we know how to get there, rather than reclaiming our power, living in the present moment, and taking that inspired action? And it goes back to this idea of motivation, because a lot of times we want to act when we feel motivated, but motivation is fleeting. And what's going to make us feel motivated is taking that action, is getting that 1 step further, or making that 1 additional connection, because you never know where your abundance, where your opportunities are going to come from. So it's being in alignment with your journey, your process, that's going to slowly but surely get you there.
100%. And motivation, listen, motivation serves and it doesn't. Like I tend to look at motivation as it's kind of like it helps, it serves, and it's kind of like that quick hit, that fix. I hate to compare it to like, fast food, because some people are like, oh, I don't even like fast food. But it's like, okay, it's something else. Like whatever you feel good in the moment, that gives you that quick fix and that quick, but is it sustainable, right? And like you said, it's the things that you don't want to be doing And that really, it's the small wins over time that really create the massive success. Look at any kind of NBA player, NFL, any sports player. What do? They're practicing day in and day out, an Olympian. And it's not sexy. It is not. Getting up at 4 a.m. is not sexy, right? Doing the mindset work is not sexy. Losing is not sexy. Watching game film of not sexy. And yet, right, they win whatever match, tournament, and that's sexy. Right. And people are like, oh, but you didn't see the 4 a.m. practices. You didn't see, when we lost and had to watch it, on game film and study it. So it's taking those unsexy actions, even if they don't feel good. I mean, we all talk about aligned action, like, oh, like make sure you're in alignment before you take action. Yes. And sometimes it's not going to feel in alignment, and sometimes it's going to feel annoying, like getting up at 4 a.m.
Yeah. So how do we get into alignment? Like you just said, sometimes we know where we want to be. Now we've decided, like, I'm going to be on that path, but now there's this behavior modification and unlearning that needs to occur. How do we tap into that when it feels so unnatural in the moment?
Yeah. So it really has to come from like the identity level. Like you literally have to become a different person. And this is what Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about. And there's a lot of people that talk about this. It's like, you literally have to become a different person. So when we shift our identity, it's like, okay, who do you want to be? And how are you going to show up? So it's even in the way that you speak, or in the way you enter a room, or anything like that. And listen, it's not like, oh, you don't have to shift overnight. Like you hear people of quitting smoking, right? Cold turkey. They do a radical, some people can do it and some people can't. Like, let's just get real. Some people radically can be like, I'm never picking up a cigarette again. And they don't. And some people need to wean off of that, for a couple months. So same thing. It's like, know who you are. Don't shame yourself if you're not like, oh, can't do it radically. It's okay. Like you are where you are. Again, this is the kind of the parts work of like, okay, honoring all of that. And it's like, it's just shifting that identity of who you are. Like, who is the future self version of you? What would they be doing? And again, not putting so much shame if, okay, the future version of you isn't eating fast food, but say you just wanted to, right? Why do you wanted to reward yourself? Okay. So it's like getting back on, right? And being, okay, now I'm going to get back on track. Because I think a lot of times, we are like, oh yeah, we have to change our identity and change ourselves and be in alignment and do all these things, right? Like they tell us, even personal development industry, like it's sometimes it's a little harsh, right? Like to keep on learning. It's like, we're already whole, perfect, and complete. Like when we are 2 years old, we are perfect, right? And then what happens? We literally have to relearn or unlearn the things that were programmed. So we already are. It's just moving those things out of the way, the limiting beliefs or whatever you call them, the things that are stopping you out of the way. And it could be some of it's linked to trauma, and all trauma is too much, too fast, too soon. Mm-hmm. So too much, too fast, too soon, right? So a car accident could be trauma. When you were 5 and you heard no, maybe when you were whatever, it could hit you differently. Mm-hmm. So it's just looking at those things that are keeping us, held back, keeping us small and insignificant. So, and really it comes to also like the inner childhood work. I know it sounds a little woo-woo, but like reparenting yourself, like even if you had perfect parents, even if I've had clients that are like, my childhood was great. And then we start to dig and it's like, yeah, maybe that's the issue. The childhood was too perfect that maybe you felt under pressure, right? Or something. So it's just looking at, and everyone's different. I'm not saying everyone, needs this work, but everyone is different to see what is, and I would have the listeners ask themselves, like what is in the way? And sometimes you don't know because it's a blind spot. And that's where coaching and mentoring and even going to seminars, like if you, crack at it or just stay curious about yourself, that's the best place to be.
Yeah. So I know there's people listening who are probably like, I don't actually know if I do need the help or need to do the work. So how do we identify that in ourselves? And be as woo-woo as you want. This is the place for it.
Yeah. I think it's a personal decision for every single person, right? Mm-hmm. There's no for me, in my opinion, there's no cookie cutter approach. Like, oh, if you are, if you experience trauma, you need to do X, Y, and Z. Like, it's really, I would say it's very personal. And I would also say, if you're listening to this and you want more, right? Because some people are good. Some people are like, I don't want to change. I am good. Like, because it's all different. There's 8 billion people in the world. Not everyone needs a coach. Not everyone needs self-development and personal development. No, it's not. It is not that. So I would say if someone's listening and they want more, or they've had a desire, in their heart, on their head, they wanted to start something. And this is the thing, it's never too late. You're never too old. You haven't missed the boat. Like, all of that is untrue. You hear, right, 80-year-olds going back to college. You hear, like, it is, we are given this beautiful thing called life. And it's like the beginning and the end and the dash in the middle, right? There's a whole like quote around this and story around the dash in the middle. It's like, what, at the end of your life, what do you want to be saying? And some people are like, yeah, I'm actually good at, like, if I were to pass tomorrow, like, I've done every single thing that I wanted to do. So I think that's the question of, like, do you want to do more? Is there anything that is like, that you still want to do? Or do you feel like you're, maybe you're recreating a situation in your life, or a pattern, or maybe there's sometimes you're stuck and you can't get ahead. So I would just say, take a look at your life. You know where you are, you know what you want. And some people don't know what they want, but they're curious. They're like, I know I don't want this, but I don't know what else I want. Or maybe they're just not satisfied in a certain area of their life. And it could be any, right? Financial, health, wealth, relationships. So really, coaching and mentorship can be anything, right? It could be in any kind of area of your life. So there's no cookie cutter approach. I think people will know if they want help. It's kind of like therapy, or, getting in shape. Sometimes also it's the teacher will appear when the student is ready. And sometimes, right, it's not, it's not, and there's no good or bad around it. So I would say coaching's not for everyone, or mentorship. You'll get, like, either a feeling even if you don't know the whole picture.
Sure. And you were in a place years back where you wanted more out of your career. At least you had, a really successful job working in the fashion industry, but you wanted more. You wanted to tap into your potential and your purpose as a human being. So can you tell us about your own personal journey?
Yeah. So I started out on Wall Street, and then I went into the fashion industry, climbed the corporate ladder. And so I had everything. Like, if you looked at my life on paper, it was perfect, right? I had every girl's dream job that wanted to be in the fashion industry. I traveled, I had the clothing allowance. I was dating all the amazing people, all the amazing men. I had it all. I had the money. But it was interesting because I was also in debt. I was in financial debt, but also I was dying inside. I was like, oh, I have this like perfect life, but I am not fulfilled. I'm not happy. I would come home crying on my bathroom floor every single day. And I was suppressing. I wasn't feeling my emotions. Because everything else on the outside looked great. It was like, I had the great handbag, like all the materialistic stuff. And no one really knew what was going on inside of me. And that's another thing. And this is where I'll bring in like mental health. It's like, sometimes you're not going to know what's going on for other people, even though they have this perfect life, or it looks perfect from the outside. And so I was climbing the corporate ladder, but I also knew, like, there's something else. I knew there was something else. I just didn't know what it was. I knew I wanted to not be in corporate, for the rest of my life. Because one turning point was, I had a boss who was, literally the right-hand woman to the CEO, and she had a baby, and she had come back to work, I think like 2 weeks later. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, I don't want that. Right. And so I was like, oh, I don't really want that, and no shame or judgment on her. Like, that's what she loved. That's what she wanted. And so but I wanted something of my own, and I knew there was just something bigger. I just didn't know what it was. So I stayed curious, like, what is it? And I stayed in corporate for a while because I found, coaching found me in 2009. And I started this journey of like, I love like learning about people. I love helping people. And that's kind of where I really fell into it, because I was in a network marketing business. And one of my clients was like, you'd be a great coach. And I'm like, what do you mean basketball coach? I don't want to be a basketball coach. And she's like, no, like a life coach. So that's when I was like, what is that? And so I got curious. I also started having my own coaches back then. And yeah, I just grew the business, and I loved it. And I loved helping people. And I think, and my journey has definitely morphed since then, but I was also, I landed in the hospital from a work addiction and overworking, because I felt the more I work, the more worthy I felt, and the more recognition and love and significance and all of that I felt, and I was getting. And so that was a piece of it. Also, like the whole I'm not good enough. And I had very deep like abandonment and rejection wounds, right? From even in my personal dating life. So there's layers, right? So you can go down this winding hole of, okay, what was holding me back? So yeah, that's my journey in a nutshell, the condensed version.
No, it's really helpful. And thank you for being so transparent, because I think a lot of times we don't recognize just how much our identities are tied up in what we're doing, and ultimately our egos, what we think of ourselves. And not even, because I think when we think of ego, we think of it being, oh, I'm the best, or like this more narcissistic view of ego. And it's not that at all. It's like, what are we projecting out to the world and identifying ourselves with? And a lot of times that's based on not just what we're doing or thinking about ourselves, but what others have relayed that they think about us, that we start to take on as ourselves too. So if I'm the workhorse, I'm working, and that's how I derive my value. And that's what makes me, significant. If I'm the A student, I have to be the smartest person in every room. But taking a step back, I think, to realize what is actually giving me fulfillment and what makes me feel more in love with myself, I think, is a question that we all need to ask. So when did you know that you wanted to leave your full-time role and actually make this transition?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I will say this too, every season is different. So fulfillment in this quarter or this year might feel and look different for you next year, right? It's because we're all changing. I knew, I guess, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but I felt like it was just, that feeling when you just feel like there's something more. And it's like, I'm not really satisfied with where I'm at right now. I'm not fulfilled. I know there's something more. There has to be something else. My feeling was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting up at the same time, doing the same stuff, doing the same routine. And listen, I have a routine in my business now. I am getting up at the same time, have routine, but it was a different feeling because I wasn't living in my purpose. I was really good at it. I was really good at what I did in corporate, but it wasn't fulfilling me. It was like, I'm doing something. I was just kind of on the hamster wheel. Yeah, I'm just doing things to get the day over, and I'm going to start and do it again. Like it was kind of that feeling of, oh my gosh, like I'm living in this. I can't wait till Friday. I can't wait till the weekend. And then the weekends are too short. And then Monday comes around again. And oh my gosh. So I felt that probably, really kind of, I would say the start, maybe a couple of years after I first started in corporate. So for a while, I was in corporate for like 18 plus years. So it took me a while. And that's why I say, if you don't know, you don't need to know what it is. You just have to, if there's a knowingness, be curious. And I stayed curious and I stayed curious. And I was like, okay, I'm going to hire a life coach. I'm going to go to these seminars. And it was a process for me. It wasn't like, oh, I was in business and I hit, multi-million status in 3 or 4 years. And listen, you can do that. That wasn't my path. That wasn't my journey. Mine was definitely more resilient, definitely more longer. And I'm still on the path, and I welcome it, because for me, it's like, oh, the resilience and the not getting success so fast, like makes it so much sweeter to be like, oh, it's like, it doesn't feel good, along the way, but it's like, how can we find joy and play in the journey? Right. That's the thing, because there's the final destination is death. Right. So if the final destination is death, and some people are like, well, not really, because they believe in life after death, but in the physical plane, death is the final destination, you're always going to be wanting more. Some people, not everybody. And that's a good thing, right? Wanting more is great, because if you're satisfied, I mean, that's great too. But sometimes, like the human condition, there's some people that, I want to always be growing and evolving. And I will say this too, I think sometimes there's a little too much of that in the personal development industry. It's like, oh, I got to get to, I don't know, the multi-million-dollar business, and there's something wrong with me and I got to fix it. And that's why I'm not there. No, it's like, let's like take a beat, take a pause. Like sometimes that's not, you can't compare your journey. Like if you are on chapter 2 to someone else's like chapter 13 and all, because everyone's life is different. So
Yeah.
it can look different.
In my chapter 2, maybe I'm like struggling, and in your chapter 2, you've hit, the multi-million or whatever your goal is. Yeah. Our life journeys, the book of our lives looks different from everyone. So we can't compare the two. But what I do like that you said is staying curious, because I think that curiosity really brings the fruit of life, because we don't have to have all the answers, and we won't. There's no such thing as like figuring it all out. But if there's a question that we have, exploring ourselves and exploring our nature. And, you called it the hamster wheel, and I called it, back in the day, the matrix. Now I remember it very, very clearly, experiencing this for the first time, because I was, always a really curious and joyful and like enterprising, as a kid. And I remember having this college internship and taking public transportation to like over an hour to where I was interning, and being on the train and looking around, and I was so tired, but I looked around and everyone around me just looked defeated. Yeah. And I was like, this is how it happens. Because before then I didn't understand how it's not about a wanting more. It's just about that wanting to be curious and wanting to discover more about ourselves and what we can do. It's not, wanting more of the material, but like, how do we get to a point where we're so satiated with life that we don't want more? And on that train ride, I experienced it, and it shook me to my core. I think I was like 20 at the time. Of this is how it happens. We get so tired and so tied up in our routines and our habits that we stop questioning, what do I want? What do I need? What do I like? Is there something that I'd like to do? Do I want to switch it up and go to a different restaurant? Like something so simple as like going to a different place for lunch. We get so tied up in our routines that we stop asking ourselves questions, and life ends. We become a part of the living dead. And so I recognized when I was in corporate, like I had that moment, and it was very real. It shook me to my core. And then I had my, career where I was climbing the ladder, and I was like, oh my God, I'm there. I am in the matrix doing that. And that's when I knew it was time to get out.
Yeah. And I like what you said, the living dead, right? And this is also another tool. It's like, how much pleasure and play are you having, right? And some people get freaked out with the word pleasure, right? But let's just say play. Let's just say fun, right? I was not having fun. Like I was like workhorse. I was climbing the corporate ladder, growing my business. I mean, that's why I landed in the hospital. It's like I wasn't having fun at all. Like it was, or I was working really hard, and then I played really hard to the detriment of my own well-being, right? Like play hard, work hard, like but I really wasn't like enjoying life. I wasn't playing. And it's like, life is supposed to be fun. Like life is supposed to, I mean, look at children, right? They're always playing. It's like, oh my God. I mean, listen, they don't have responsibilities and everything, but like you can have responsibilities and play at the same time. Like, and I think there's a lot of people, and that's why the suppression happens, right? For me, I was suppressing my feelings because I wasn't also managing my emotions, or really wasn't feeling my emotions. I was literally like, kind of like picture a beach ball. You're trying to push the beach ball down into the water, right? Into the ocean, to the pool. And it was like, I was suppressing I wasn't allowing myself to cry. I wasn't allowing myself to get angry. Because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to get angry or cry or grieve. And guess what? We get to do that, because if we don't, and that's why you see people blow up, right? Some people get cut off in traffic, and then like they blow up, and you're like, where did that, I mean, and listen, some people have some stressful moments, like someone, maybe a loved one's in the hospital or whatever. end, right? But there's more to that, right? There's more under that. It's like, oh my God, like where did that come from? And so that's unprocessed emotions and that's unprocessed feelings. And that's where kind of like some of the trauma work and the inner child and all that, the parts work comes in, because it's like we have been, when we adult, we like adults, we are adulting and we just suppress and suppress and suppress because yeah, we can't have a tantrum when we're like, what 2-year-old has a tantrum and then they self-regulate, right? When they have the tantrum, and then after the tantrum, they kind of like self-regulate themselves, right? Well, when we're adults, we can have a tantrum in the meeting. I mean, some people do, right? But but that's not the right. We can't fly off the seat of our pants as the normal. I mean, again, some people do, but that's not like adulting, right? So we get to, and so what I tell people is like, make sure you're feeling the emotions, because when you're suppressing, you're also like not having fun, like you're not also allowing yourself to have fun, because you have all these emotions that are stored here. So it's like, go do a primal scream in your pillows, hit your pillows, like get it out, do a date with yourself. If you look at your finances, do a money date, do like an emotional release date, right? So we get to do that. And I think people aren't also not having fun. And some people are like scrolling in social media. Oh, that's fun. Like I'll just look at TikTok at 4 a.m. or right before I go to bed. And like, that's their fun or whatever, right? Like, oh, I go on vacation like once or twice a year. That's my fun. No, that's not enough. Like we're talking daily doses of fun.
In the moment. Right. And I think part of that is because we live in hustle culture and we're taught that life is hard. It's a hard knock life for us. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like life is supposed to be hard. And that's why the secret is the secret. I always say this is because we think that we are supposed to struggle and that we have to strive, and really we just have to be. And so when we allow ourselves to do that without, shaming ourselves for having fun or feeling pleasure, we're able to really live in a state of bliss. Because I think what happens too is, we start to regulate our fun too. Like even if we're not, doing anything that's detrimental to ourselves, say we had a really great day, we just had like the best day and I didn't even have to, spend a bunch of money, whatever it is, like, but you had the best time. Then the next day, sometimes there's this feeling of like, okay, now I've got to get it back together. But what if that is together? I think as human beings, we're supposed to, no matter what life hits us with, because life will hit you hard, right? Maintain our state of bliss or make our way back to bliss, and knowing that those moments of pleasure and fun are just as much a part of the human experience and are necessary as the lessons and the challenges that we face.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes to the question of receiving, and the question of like, how good can you stand it? Right. Mm-hmm. My coach asked me that because I was like, experiencing some wins and celebrations, and like, I was just celebrating every day. And she's like, how good can you stand it? It's like, oh my gosh, I have a cat even now, like if 10 good things were to happen, right? Like, could I actually receive it? And that's like, you hear people winning the lottery, right? People win the lottery, they get all this money. Everyone wants to win the lottery. Everyone wants to win the lottery. And you win the lottery. And then why do half the people lose the money, or they're broke, or they have to claim bankruptcy 7 years later? Why? Because they don't have the capacity to hold it, right? They don't know that feeling of how good can it get, right? So it's like, and that's also like I get the money really quickly, and then I spend the money because I can't be with the money. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's how good can you stand it? And so a technique that you can do to actually increase your capacity and even like, increase the goodness that is coming in. Because listen, we are, as a society, we are so conditioned, like, oh, we got to, something bad's going to happen. And that's a human, because we want to feel safe. Right. Yeah. As human beings, and our brain and our body, it's the brain's responsibility to keep ourselves safe. Right. We are human beings, like animals, right? We need to be safe. So that's our reptilian brain. But it's like, okay, but are we allowed? So we're not used to, right, being like, how good can it get? Right. Because we're always being like, no, I got to stay small and safe. So a practice that you can do is like actually celebrating and looking for the wins every single day, when you go to bed, or even throughout the day, like midday, like, oh my gosh, what's a win today? A win today, you could do it when you get up. A win today is, oh my gosh, I have air in my lungs and my heart is still beating. That's a win, right? Like that is a win. So it's like, people need to realize like there's wins happening all the time. And it's just, and that's where the perception work comes in. It's like, what are you perceiving? What are you looking at? What are you finding? Because I remember I wanted to have like a certain type of car. I think it was like a white Mercedes Benz. And I put my mind to be like, I want to get a white Mercedes Benz. Guess what? Guess what I saw every time I went out on the road? A white Mercedes Benz, because my perception was like linked there to be like, okay, this is my goal. This is what I want to do. And I kept seeing all these white Mercedes Benz. Same thing with like having fun and the celebrations. If you're like, okay, I'm going to find the wins and the celebrations of life every single day. What are they? Right. And you start to do it, because it could be any kind of win, right?
Yeah.
It could be, oh, my child is still alive. Right. And that's where the gratitude practice. So anything, and there's no small or large win. It's just is, right? Like even having the eyesight or the audio, right, to hear this,
Yeah.
that's a win. Having a cell phone is a win. Having drinking water, clean water, is a win, because some third world countries don't even have that. So it's like really getting grounded in that.
I love that. And it's, if we're always looking, because on the flip side, we can look for what we want and it will appear and we'll attain it in some type of way. But the mind doesn't have a filter either way. So if we're looking for the negative, we'll also find that. If you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, it will drop. And yes, it's a part of our body's mechanism to help keep us safe. And, when bad things happen, we react, and we don't want to have that reaction. So rather than letting ourselves feel that when disappointments come, we'd rather put up this wall and protect ourselves and expect for the bad things to come, and inevitably they do. But if we just we're able to, just deal with the ebbs of flow in life. It's just like this constant stream, and things happen, and the water washes over it and we're okay. So in addition to, gratitude and looking for the best in each day, what are some other practices that we can take home with us?
Yeah, I would say so. It's the embodied state, right? So it is, if you're afraid of heights, and I did this, right? Well, I didn't really choose to do this. The universe is like, okay, I'm going to put you in this situation, but it's getting in that embodied. So if you're afraid of heights, for example, and I'm not saying go skydiving, but what I am saying is maybe get in a helicopter. And that's what happened to me. I was like, I am not taking a helicopter. It was when I was going to a speaking event and she had the car option, the helicopter. I'm like, I'm doing the car. And then I was late and I was like, I had to do the helicopter. I'm like, oh, right. So it's choosing, because I didn't have that. Well, I could have choice, but it's choosing to be in an embodied state. So if you have some kind of fear, it's actually putting yourself in the situation. And then, like I said, you don't have to go skydiving if you don't like heights, but it's like, maybe it's taking the helicopter ride. Maybe it's, I don't know, going to the 90th floor of a building, right? And just looking out the window, because what that does is from an embodied, because we could do all the mindset work, but it's also the body, right? There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. So there's actually there's limitations and traumas that are stuck in the body. So we get to be out of the body as well, because it's like a mind, soul, body, right? It's all connected. So what we want to do here is actually put ourselves in situations that feel uncomfortable, because what that signifies to the body is, okay, I'm here. And like, even when I was in the helicopter, I was literally like, oh my, like I felt like I was dying. And so when you don't die, right, it's like, oh, okay, it signifies, okay, it expands that capacity again, right? So now, will I go in a helicopter again? I don't know, probably not, but I could. Like, I don't have the same fear attached to it because I already have done it, right? So if you already have done it and experienced it, it's like, okay, right? So I would say put yourself in an embodied state of what you don't like, even if it's like vulnerability, right? It's like for some women, right? They can't go out of the house without makeup on. Do that, right? One day, don't wear makeup and go out of the house, right? I mean, that's kind of a small example, but for some people, that's huge, right? Or, public speaking. Some people hate to speak in front of people or people that they think are going to judge them. Put yourself in a position and do it, right? So and you're not going to like it, and you're not going to want to, and it's going to feel uncomfortable, and it's going to feel like you're going to die in your body, and your mind is going to keep you safe and say, don't do it, right? But it's embodying that. And so when the body, and then you just prove your mind and your body wrong. So that's like a huge thing with the gratitude and the finding fun, but it's the embodiment. It's literally called embodied like therapy in a sense. Like I forget the technical name for it, but it's literally experiencing things that to say to your body and mind, oh, I didn't die. Now, so that's huge. I mean, that has helped me, and it's so uncomfortable every single time. And there's always different layers to it too.
Yeah. No, this has been amazing. And I literally could sit here and talk to you forever because this has been such a rewarding conversation. But any final words of wisdom you want to leave us with today?
Yes, I would say, again, if it's on your heart, in your mind, and there's something that's a pull and you'll know it, maybe you don't know exactly what it is, I would say life is short, right? We are not promised tomorrow. We are not promised next week. We really aren't. I mean, COVID taught us that, right? When we first got, right? It's like, oh my gosh, like every moment was precious. So it's figuring out, okay, what are you unhappy with? What are you not fulfilled or satisfied with? And just get curious and know that if you have a thought or if you have a pull, that is no one else has that pull and no one else has that like specific thought, because we are all unique. All of our DNAs are unique. We are all unique. So even if you want to do something also that like millions of people are already doing, you get to do it too, because it's yours, right? It's uniqueness. So I would just say, listen to your heart, listen to your head. Well, not when your head's keeping you safe, but listen to those. And sometimes it serves, right? Because safety is, we want to listen to our instinct, because sometimes our instinct is right. It's like, okay, don't walk down that dark alley, right? So I would just say, listen to your heart, listen to your head, tune in to yourself, because you're your own best guru, and just see if there's any blind spots in the way. But you are definitely being called if you're feeling, that pull, and just listen to it.
Well, this was amazing. Thank you so much for joining Confidence Conversations.
Thank you so much for having me.